The Bermuda Triangle, said to be a mysterious vortex claiming lives, ships, and planes at will.
Something really strange is going on here, guys.
Some are never found.
Well, we searched, found absolutely nothing.
Others turn up as gravestones on the ocean floor. Among such feared supernatural phenomena as UFOs and alien abduction, the Triangle is a serious contender. This program is setting out to unravel its secrets, finding out what lies behind the myth. Flying into the heart of the Bermuda Triangle. Welcome to the 450,000 square miles of the Atlantic Ocean, known as the Bermuda Triangle. Weather here can wreak havoc with planes and ships. A single Bermuda Triangle hurricane packs more energy than 10,000 nuclear bombs. Ocean swells can climb to 50 feet, the height of a 5-story building. Winds of up to 200 miles per hour, 4 times stronger than a gale force wind. Even in calm weather, this triangle of water stretching from Miami, north to Bermuda, and south to Puerto Rico, is known to swallow victims. Some disappearing without a trace. No SOS. No survivors to tell their tales. Others at rest in the graveyard of ships and aircraft beneath the waves. Firm statistics are impossible to come by, but some ships, planes, and people have vanished without explanation. Others for reasons that have come to light later on. In 1918, the supply ship USS Cyclops left Barbados. Shortly afterwards, all contact ceased. And in 1963, the SS Marine Sulphur Queen made a routine call from near Key West and was never heard of again. Scientists insist there is nothing unusual about the Triangle waters, and statistically, the skeptics are probably right. Yet the stories, the legends, have only grown with time. But why this myth about a stretch of water? After World War II came the dawn of the Cold War and the terrifying prospect of nuclear conflict. Uncertainty and fear helped foster inexplicable myths that flourished in films and popular culture. Unidentified flying objects reported over American soil. Alien abductions blamed for numerous disappearances. Every far-fetched tale seemed within the realm of possibility. These tensions of the sci-fi age spawned book and newspaper reports of supposed disappearances and supernatural happenings. Just as the number of air and sea journeys and the casualties were increasing dramatically. By the mid-1960s, a writer for Argosy magazine coined the term Bermuda Triangle, elevating the myth to even greater heights. But what is real? And what is myth? Meet the theorists, scientists, eccentrics, experts, and eyewitnesses, all drawn to the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. Paul Vance is one man who does believe in the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. He claims to have seen something strange on a boating trip. Perhaps a UFO.
My friend Doug Gerd and I were leaving West Palm Beach, started watching a particular white light that came across the sky, and then it stopped. This was not an airplane, it was a single white light. And after it stopped, a cloud just appeared underneath it. It was spinning. It kind of looked like a tornado, but it wasn't that long as a tornado. Just almost at the same moment that I noticed the light stop, my engine started running rough on my boat. But I was so mesmerized at what I was seeing that I hardly took notice of it.
Paul Vance's story is impossible to prove or disprove. But science does offer a few logical explanations for many Bermuda Triangle mysteries. One of the most commonly held theories revolves around weather. Extreme weather around the world wreaks havoc with shipping and flights. And the Bermuda Triangle is no exception. It's home to some of the most fearsome weather on the face of the planet. Could such extremes of weather account for many of the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle? Our first and most obvious candidate is the hurricane. These monstrous swirling masses of rain and cloud create the largest storms on Earth. 100 miles across, with winds of up to 200 miles an hour. A disaster for any craft in their path. Powerful storm surges, which crash onto land, account for many hurricane-related deaths. Their power can surprise even experienced hurricane hunters, like storm photographer Jim Eds, who has felt the full force of a hurricane in the Bermuda Triangle.
I was filming the downstairs of a house that had been gutted out by the waves, and I moved to across the street, and as I was going there, a wave came and clipped me from behind.
Eds almost lost his life as the force of the impact snatched him away. He was dragged 300 feet in the jaws of the storm wave before he finally managed to escape. This time, he was lucky. Every hurricane's strength and direction is monitored in detail by scientists at the National Hurricane Center in Miami, Florida. Despite their efforts, Mother Nature still springs surprises. The awesome power of storms such as August 1992's Hurricane Andrew can trump even the best weather experts, such as Jim Lushine, with heartbreaking results.
I was at the Hurricane Center working, looking at the satellite pictures, putting out the hurricane local statements. My wife, who had lived in the house for 20 years along with my two daughters, actually talked to me on the phone and said, "Jim, is this going to miss us? We think the wind is not very strong here right now." And I said, "No, I'm sorry, honey, this is it."
When Hurricane Andrew reached the edge of the Bermuda Triangle, its full fury hit their home in Dade County.
I hadn't heard anything for several hours of what was happening. Turned the corner around the block where my house was, and my house really wasn't anymore.
Their immense destructive power makes hurricanes among the most studied weather systems on Earth, and possibly the most rational explanation for the tragic events occurring within the Bermuda Triangle. Every fact we can learn about hurricanes may help dismantle the Triangle's mystery. From space, we watch their every move. Here on Earth, some scientists even deliberately fly into the Bermuda Triangle and into the heart of hurricanes to see what they can learn. One such man is Robert Rogers.
I do research on hurricanes, take measurements in the storms, we fly into the storms. I work with computers to try to better understand how hurricanes work, how they form, where they'll track, what causes them to change intensity, produce rainfall, those sorts of issues. First thing you need is a a body of warm water. The water forms essentially sort of the fuel for the hurricane. That's what it needs to sustain itself, to drive the energy, which then drives the winds, essentially, of the storm. Another thing that you need winds that are favorable so that the storm can preserve itself. If you have winds that are blowing from different directions at different altitudes, for example, then the storm can't really maintain itself. So you need these winds essentially all blowing from the same direction and the same speed.
Nowadays, satellite technology can warn travelers inside the triangle of an approaching hurricane. Along with better navigational systems, that may explain the recent trend for fewer calamities or disappearances with each successive year. But the story is not complete. The hurricane season only lasts 6 months, from June to November, and many of the disappearances happen out of season. Are there other natural phenomena that could be party to the mystique? Waterspouts, tornadoes at sea, are common off the coast of southern Florida, and they too can be deadly. This storm over Miami evolved from a tornado into a waterspout with winds of up to 110 miles per hour.
Down here in South Florida, we can get them quite often. They're a very fascinating phenomenon. You can often get several waterspouts all in a row that you can watch. You know, they probably last for 5 or 10 minutes or so.
But waterspouts can appear without warning.
I know that there's some severe weather out there that can affect ships. Like you can have a waterspout out there. Say you had some people inside eating lunch. Well, you can get a column of air spinning and it comes down right over them and they wouldn't even know it.
Dangerous and unpredictable. Waterspouts are too weak to sink big ships or to bring down high-flying aircraft. But they could account for a small percentage of the unexplained disappearances inside the triangle. But what about more familiar weather, such as thunderstorms? Have they contributed to the myths of the Bermuda Triangle? Thunderstorms evolve when warm, humid air rises to meet cooler air. Regions such as the Bermuda Triangle, from which warmed air perpetually rises, are perfect incubators. At sea, thunderstorms form rapidly, unleashing their full destructive power on unsuspecting planes and ships.
There are many localized types of weather that may affect just a very small area, say one particular area maybe 50 meters in size, and then a short distance away the weather may be just completely different. And these can come in the form of thunderstorms, which will produce microbursts, downbursts of wind that come down from the thunderstorm and create a great gust of wind, perhaps as high as 100 miles an hour, that could tip over a ship or do a lot of damage to a boat like that.
Along with thunderstorms comes lightning, a constant threat in this part of the world. Dave Ease has been a dive boat captain for Stewart Cove Diving in Nassau for 14 years. He dives in the waters of the Bermuda Triangle almost every day.
We came across a lightning storm. We had to pass pretty close to it, and you could feel every time the lightning strike or you hear the thunder, you just know to let go of the steering wheel, because if you held on to it, you'll feel a little jolt. And after a little bit of time, you could hear the antenna sound like a bunch of hornets in it, just buzzing. That's just because of the static electricity building up in it.
Lightning can be disorienting, even deadly, but usually larger vessels and planes are protected and can ride out a single strike. Like waterspouts and thunderstorms, lightning appears to offer no more than a partial explanation of the myth. And there are still other factors at work in the Bermuda Triangle, possibly helping to explain some of the so-called mysterious disappearances. Not least among these is the high incidence of drug running and piracy among small boats and light aircraft around the Miami coastline. And yet, despite all such logical explanations, there is one disappearance that has arguably done more than any other to fuel the myth of the Bermuda Triangle. On one fair weather day at the end of the Second World War, 5 naval aircraft carrying 14 young airmen vanished without a trace. The disappearance of the US Navy Flight 19 captured the public imagination as the greatest of all Bermuda Triangle mysteries. The scale of this calamity was made all the more tragic by the losing of so many men just months after World War II. These are the haunting shots of the crew of Flight 19. These young men would become victims of one of America's greatest mysteries, bringing international attention to the myth of the Bermuda Triangle. Wild and weird legends have developed around Flight 19 since its disappearance. But what are the facts? Perhaps no one knows more about the infamous tragedy than Bermuda Triangle expert, enthusiast and author Jean Cussard.
In terms of the triangle, I consider myself the person who bothered to write the biography on it, all the mysteries about it, the facts instead of the fiction, instead of the legend, instead of the hearsay.
Cussard has examined all the known historical records about Flight 19, as well as listening to the first-hand accounts of witnesses from the time. Official records reveal that instrument failure was the first sign of trouble for Flight 19. But what really happened? If we retrace the steps of the flight, could we learn anything new? In an authentic World War II Avenger aircraft, we decide to refly for perhaps the first time the exact planned route of the doomed Flight 19 out over the waters of the Bermuda Triangle. Under the leadership of experienced pilot Charles Taylor, Flight 19 originally took off from what is now Fort Lauderdale International Airport. The planes, 4 of them carrying a crew of 3 and one with just 2 aviators on board, were to fly a 4-sided route from Fort Lauderdale to Bimini, Great Harbor Cay to the island of Grand Bahama, and then back to base. The weather was fair. Simple enough, you might think. The first leg was to take them toward Bimini, around 56 miles out from their Fort Lauderdale base, with some torpedo practice over Chicken and Hen Shoal en route. The plan shows them continuing east on a compass heading of 91 degrees for 67 miles. They were then supposed to turn north-northwest for 73 miles. The final left turn to the west would have put them on direct course for their Fort Lauderdale home base. Records show that they made the first 3 legs of their journey, but they never made that final leg. They lost contact at 7:04 p.m., never to be heard from again. No remains ever to be found. It was a tragic journey for the crewmen of Flight 19 and the friends and loved ones they left behind. Obie O'Brien, an ex-Navy pilot, war hero who signed up the year after the disaster, will pilot our Avenger bomber, identical to the 5 planes of Flight 19.
In 1950, I was flying the Corsair in a Corsair squadron, and we went to Korea on the USS Boxer. I flew 40-some missions, and during that time, I was awarded the Air Medal.
Our pilot is from the same generation as the young and dedicated servicemen of Flight 19, who would have been grateful to have survived the dangers of the Second World War. To make our flight authentic, our plane will navigate with the same basic method as was used by Flight 19 and other pilots for years, steering by compass and watching the islands below. We take off from the same Fort Lauderdale runway at the same time, 2:10 in the afternoon, as Flight 19, although in slightly better weather conditions. For Flight 19 60 years before, the first signs of trouble came when their leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, radioed that he was uncertain of his position. Jim Ward was a radio operator on a nearby naval ship that day and heard the radio transmissions of the fateful flight.
We heard the flight leader come in and call the tower and ask them if they would put their radar on and get a fix on him because he wasn't quite sure where he was.
It seems inexplicable, but it appears Taylor believed that he was over the Florida Keys, the island chain stretching 100 miles out into the Gulf of Mexico. It's more likely that he was almost some 200 miles further northeast.
So the tower came back in about 15, 20 minutes and said, "We can't find you on the radar. Do you have any idea where you are?" He says, "Well, I think I've seen some islands." They said, "Well, can you identify the islands?"
Exact transcripts of his radio messages reveal that Taylor was experiencing problems.
Both my compass out and I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm on the land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down and I don't know how to get to Fort Lauderdale.
After flying without incident, our plane runs into problems. Amazingly, it's at almost exactly the same time as Taylor announced his instruments were malfunctioning, around 3:50. The turn and slip instrument in our Avenger starts to perform erratically, making it harder for our pilot to make smooth and efficient turns.
Let's turn and fly east 2 degrees. We're going too damn far north instead of east. If there is anything, we wouldn't see it.
It was now 3 hours since they took off. They had enough fuel for at least another 3 hours. The crewmen started to argue, and another Flight 19 pilot, Captain Edward Powers, tried to take control and turn them to the west.
Damn it! If we would just head west, we would get home!
In our recreation of the flight, the next hour passes smoothly and Great Harbor Cay is safely in sight below. We make a left turn and head north for Grand Bahama, the most northerly point of our flight, and another hour's flying time away. Here, Flight 19 should have turned west and headed home. But by now, Flight 19 could have been disoriented, their fuel dangerously low, and with darkness fast approaching.
You didn't get far enough east. How long have we been going east? We're now heading 270 west!
Now, incredibly, another problem affects the recreation of Flight 19. Our chase plane pilot, flying alongside us to take film of the Avenger, announces his aircraft's turn and slip indicator, exactly the same instrument which became erratic on our plane, is also malfunctioning. It's completely frozen.
Something really strange is going on here, guys.
What is the problem? And more importantly, why is it happening? Almost 2 hours into recreating Flight 19. 2 planes, 2 instrument failures. Maybe the instruments of both our planes were already faulty. Whatever the explanation, we make our final turn west, a heading which could have saved the lives of Flight 19, and head for Fort Lauderdale with a spooky feeling. Flight 19 never made that final turn west. The 5 planes were doomed to fly on, with rapidly emptying gas tanks, further and further to the east, into the empty ocean and the growing darkness.
We will head 270 until we hit the beach or run out of gas. When the first man gets down to 10 gallons of gas, we will all land in the water together. Does everyone understand that?
And that was the last that we heard on the radio. They asked him how much gas he had left. He said about a half hour, 20 minutes. We waited till that half hour went by, and there was no more activity on the radio. We knew they were down someplace, but we didn't know where. So they sent out all the boats and all the planes that they had available to go look for them.
Navy rules dictate that all the planes in a formation should ditch together in such a crisis. Nobody knows what truly happened to the planes of Flight 19. Why wasn't a single crewman, life jacket, or piece of wreckage from 5 7-ton planes ever found? Former naval pilot Dave White was part of the search team.
I think, frankly, they got lost, that the instructor took them the wrong way in spite of the students saying, go west. He didn't go far enough west.
No one knew for certain where Flight 19 ditched, and it was 8 hours before the main search could be mounted. It must have seemed like an eternity to the crew's loved ones. In that time, the Gulf Stream current and surface winds would have been able to move any wreckage more than 50 miles from their estimated crash position. Finding a lone swimmer in those conditions would have been like finding a needle in a haystack.
Well, we searched, started at about 5:30 in the morning, right after daylight, and we found absolutely nothing.
Scores of ships and over 200 planes were deployed in the search for Flight 19. At the time, it was one of the largest search missions of its kind ever mounted. What is it like to be the first pilot ever to refly that fateful, tragic journey and get home safe? Avenger pilot O.B. O'Brien.
I could almost feel the presence of those 14 brave men who perished 60 years ago. And it's a very sobering feeling.
The disappearance of Flight 19 and the media frenzy that ensued solidified the legend of the Bermuda Triangle and still remains its best-known mystery. But these 5 planes of 1945 were by no means the last to go missing. In 1948, a DC-3 took off from San Juan, Puerto Rico on December the 27th, bound for Miami. It disappeared without trace. In 1963, 2 huge KC-135 aerial refueling military planes crashed on a return flight to Homestead Air Base near Miami on August the 28th. Flying 500 feet apart, they fell out of the sky simultaneously from around 36,000 feet. But the 2 planes did not just disappear. Wreckage was found. But had the 2 planes collided? Was it simple pilot error? We will never know the exact truth. Revealing how easily facts can become myth, this flight too has passed into the annals of Bermuda Triangle legends. Leaving no stone unturned in our quest to unravel what lies behind the myth of the Bermuda Triangle, we look at the likelihood of mechanical or pilot failures. Could human error and spatial disorientation offer an answer to why some planes disappear? Pilots flying over the ocean can easily lose their sense of position and even confuse which is up and down or left and right. Humans are not designed for traveling at high speed in 3 dimensions above the ground. Even on a clear day, it's possible to become disorientated and confuse sea for sky, especially when light is reflecting from the ocean's surface, common in this part of the world. In mist and fog, the problem is even worse. And if it is no longer clear which way is up and down, it would be easy to fly straight into the ocean. One person who well knows the dangers of pilot disorientation is Florida flying instructor Carol Collins. She thinks the legend of the Bermuda Triangle could have a very simple explanation.
On a day when it's more hazy, you're going to have a much less distinct horizon. If we look out this way, we do still have a line of the horizon, but you can see that it's not quite as clear as it was on the other side. I'm going to put the plane in a bit of a bank. And right now we're entering slowly into a climbing turn. And if you notice, you're not really feeling anything. I I could very gradually get this airplane into a descent. And if I don't do a very rapid descent where your ears are starting to pop on you, you're never even going to know that you're in that descent.
Clearly, she isn't a believer. In Colin's opinion, many of the aircraft accidents in the Bermuda Triangle can be down to stress, being overtired, or getting disoriented. But what about the disappearances of ships? Is it possible that human error could be at work? Weather scientist Chris Lancy agrees that there is an explanation for most incidents.
Not as a scientist, but as a resident, I would have to ascribe a lot of the problems ascribed to the Bermuda Triangle as just human error. There's a lot of people that do stupid things and they get caught in a stupid area, and then they want to blame it on somebody else. So knowing human nature, knowing how many idiots live in the area, some of that's just going to be bad judgment.
One organization has unique first-hand knowledge about ships and boats getting into trouble in the Bermuda Triangle. The US Coast Guard. They're involved in rescues all over America's coastline. Chief Petty Officer John Guthrie, crew member of a Miami Station Coast Guard helicopter and a proud member of the busiest sea rescue service in the world. He knows exactly how easy it is to become disoriented.
Sometimes you get a haze, and if it's a real calm day, you'll get the water looking like the sky and the sky looking like the water.
According to the US Coast Guard, in a review of aircraft and vessel losses in the area over the last 60 years, there has been nothing to suggest that casualties were the result of anything other than human error or mechanical failure. On an average day, the US Coast Guard saves 11 lives and assists more than 130 people in distress. In recent years, a higher percentage of those needing help have been safely rescued because of a new, more accurate generation of a rescue device called an EPIRB, an emergency position indicating radio beacon. EPIRBs are credited with saving more than 14,000 lives worldwide since being introduced in 1982. In the Bermuda Triangle, thousands of rescues are made every year. The EPIRBs play a vital role in locating distressed vessels.
They can take this with them into the water if their boat sinks and activate it. And what this does, it sends a signal to the satellites, which has a code for each individual 406 EPIRB.
Officially, the US Coast Guard doesn't recognize the existence of the Bermuda Triangle. But there are still cases where the Coast Guard has been unable to find a missing vessel, even when they have been carrying an EPIRB beacon. Most Bermuda Triangle disappearances are probably caused by freak weather, human error, or simple mechanical failure. For some unlucky ones, it could be a combination of all these. One bizarre story involved Miami-based property developer Bruce Gernon. Shortly after takeoff on a routine flight, scheduled to take an hour from Andros Island in the Bahamas to Miami, Gernon claims to have noticed an innocent-looking lenticular cloud. Normally seen surrounding mountains, it hovered a few miles offshore over the Great Bahama Bank. Gernon claims the anvil heads on the clouds formed into a tunnel, with blue sky at the end of it. As he flew into the cloud, he noticed brilliant flashes of light, but no actual forks of lightning. It appeared as if the whole cloud was charged with energy. He also claims that inside the tunnel, strange lines appeared, rotating very slowly anti-clockwise. The lines ran the entire length of the tunnel, which appeared to him to be at least 10 miles in length.
And it should have taken over 3 minutes to reach the other end of the tunnel. But it only took about 20 seconds.
Gurnon felt a sensation like zero gravity, and when he looked back, he could see contrails forming on the wingtips. He watched the tunnel slowly collapse into a slit. Gurnon believes electromagnetic energy can cause a unique electronic fog around a plane.
And that was the most mysterious part of this flight. I wasn't flying through the fog. I was flying with the fog. It's a different kind of fog. It has an electromagnetic energy within it.
Then, Gurnon claims, the fog began to disperse in a few seconds, and he saw he was already over Miami. When he looked at his watch, he was amazed he'd only been airborne for 33 minutes, on a flight which should have taken over an hour. Gurnon's story of a weird electronic fog surrounding his plane in the Bermuda Triangle is so bizarre, it defies a simple physical explanation. But there is another man attracted to the triangle myth, a self-styled amateur scientist researching what he claims to be a similar phenomenon. In a makeshift laboratory in his Vancouver apartment, John Hutchison claims to have practiced levitation and metal bending using an electromagnetic force he proudly calls the Hutchison effect. He believes he has witnessed the same mysterious electronic fog as Gurnon. Sometimes uncovering the bizarre means meeting those seeking answers outside the box. Hutchinson is to some an eccentric dreamer, but according to others, is a pioneer of science.
My qualifications is basically, I just made it to grade 8. I have no qualifications whatsoever. The metallic myths that I created in my own research, which resembles Bruce Gurnon's special electronic fog, and I'm comparing my notes to metallic mist and what I've seen, this ball of metallic, dense, grayish white material appearing out of nowhere. I know there's a correlation between the two of them.
Hutchinson says his story began in May 1980, while experimenting with the equipment he had squeezed into his small apartment. He says he noticed slight movements in objects near an electric field he was generating. He tried moving objects into different areas of the field before suddenly meeting with success, making a 60-pound cannonball levitate above the table's surface.
With the early experiments I was doing, it captured a lot of interest from people from all walks of the scientific community, and that's the levitation, the metal turning all kind of strange and mushy. And people felt that there was a lot of applications for this technology that I discovered.
Hutchinson claims to levitate objects and warp metal, using a combination of radio waves and powerful million-volt electromagnetic fields. Has he actually found a way to neutralize the force of gravity? Truth is, nobody's taking him too seriously. The established scientific community are not exactly beating a path to his door to follow up his astonishing claims. And there's another problem. It's Hutchinson's film, so there's no way to check his claims. Hutchinson says that the effects he has filmed are powered by an incredible energy source. He is vague on the details, but claims it's somehow related to the so far unproven scientific theory of zero-point energy.
A cubic foot of it can actually power the Earth's energy needs for 100 years.
Scientists say even the concept of harnessing zero-point energy is no more than completely theoretical. Undeterred, Hutchinson still believes he may have unlocked this hidden energy. And he believes that inside the Bermuda Triangle, such energy may occur naturally and unleash effects similar to those he says he witnessed in his makeshift laboratory. To Hutchinson, these zero-point forces could be powerful enough to warp and flex aircraft bodies, even split ships' hulls wide open. Hutchinson believes that his amateur experiments could shed light on the forces at play in the Bermuda Triangle. To date, they have not been verified or replicated. No ship or plane wreck is known to exhibit the symptoms he describes. His theories of unlocking energy by electromagnetism perpetuate the myth of the Bermuda Triangle, but shed no light on the realities of the situation. It's no more than coincidence, but other triangle theorists also link the forces of magnetism with the Bermuda Triangle legend. The Earth is like a giant magnet, surrounded by the magnetosphere, fields of magnetic force stretching from pole to pole. One effect of that magnetic field is sometimes visible in the form of the polar lights, known in the northern hemisphere as the aurora borealis. The fluttering lights are driven by the sun's energy, particles that are swept towards the poles by the Earth's magnetic field colliding with our atmosphere. It is that magnetic field that empowers a compass, the most vital of all navigation tools until global positioning satellites came along. Compasses point to the planet's magnetic north, a location that is rarely aligned with the North Pole. It's a fact that navigators have learned to compensate for. It's long been known that there is one fact about the Bermuda Triangle which some have tried to suggest might cause navigation problems in the area. It's one of the several places on Earth where magnetic and true north have actually lined up with each other. Another such region off the coast of Japan also has a somewhat mysterious reputation for lost ships. But it's hard to imagine how this well-known alignment of the magnetic and true poles could cause problems for any trained navigator. And yet we have learned of little-known evidence about the Earth's magnetic field, a finding that the magnetosphere over the Bermuda Triangle is changing more rapidly than anywhere else on the planet. In this one respect, it means that the Bermuda Triangle is unlike any other place on Earth. And the evidence comes from 400 miles out into space. In 1999, a NASA rocket launched a tiny 132-pound satellite built by scientists in Denmark. Since then, the Ørsted satellite has passed over the waters of the Bermuda Triangle more than 25,000 times, measuring the strength of the Earth's magnetic field. In the most exciting scientific development of this quest, Ørsted project director Peter Stauning from Denmark reviews data recorded from above the Bermuda Triangle.
We have observed that the main field, which we term the field coming from the Earth's fluid core, has changed substantially in the Bermuda region during the past years.
The Danish satellite produces complex maps of the Earth's magnetic field to build up a detailed picture of changes in the strength of the Earth's magnetism. In the atmosphere, at sea level, and within the Earth's crust. From its vantage point in space, the satellite gathers data to measure effects deep inside the heart of our planet. The Earth's core is probably solid iron, but it's thought that the magnetosphere comes from the movement of a liquid outer core, spinning like a giant dynamo to generate Earth's magnetic field. Could this satellite data offer clues to unlock the secrets of the Bermuda Triangle? A group of Danish scientists compare their data with similar readings taken 20 years ago by the US MagSat satellite. It was the first time they had looked specifically at the Bermuda Triangle region, and it produced a dramatic result.
Comparing the two magnetic fields from the Maxat mission and the Austin mission shows that in the Bermuda region, the field has decreased by about 6% during 20 years.
The planet's magnetic field is weakening more rapidly in the Bermuda Triangle region than anywhere else on Earth. It's a fascinating finding, but what could be causing such changes over the past 2 decades? The ocean and air currents have changed little in centuries. The Earth's crust has taken millennia to form. So to the Danish scientists, it seems likely that the cause of the magnetic field decrease has to lie deeper, in the Earth's fiery liquid core. They speculate that the magnetic changes could come from a violent turbulence, equivalent to a storm, deep in the molten iron of the core, directly under the Bermuda Triangle. So, could the recordings of magnetic field decreases offer any sort of answer as to why the Bermuda Triangle has earned itself such a fearsome reputation? Triangle theorists ask, if the magnetic field in the Bermuda Triangle has changed so much, could it be affecting navigation systems or weather patterns? And if there is a vast swirling storm buried deep in the molten rock below the Bermuda Triangle seabed, could that, in some mysterious way, affect sailors and aviators, or their ships and their planes? These seem unlikely scenarios. Earth's magnetic field has varied greatly over millions of years and is still changing now. It's hard to imagine how the slight extra rate of change in the Bermuda region could in any way affect navigation, ships, and planes, or the people who crew them. Despite such logic, questions continued to be posed by those who would believe in the Triangle myth. So having set out to try and solve the mystery of why myths surround the Bermuda Triangle, it continues to raise more questions than answers. In fact, what have we uncovered so far in our search to find what lies behind the myth of the Bermuda Triangle? We've examined the tragic mystery of Flight 19, probably caused by human error.
There have been a lot of ships and airplanes lost in the Bermuda Triangle, but there's been a lot of ships and airplanes lost in other areas of the world too.
I really think there's something there, but I don't have the answer.
We've heard of UFOs, an unlikely contender.
After seeing what I saw that night, I believe there is something to the Bermuda Triangle.
We've looked at whether ships that have sunk without trace could have fallen victim to extreme weather.
I know that there's some severe weather out there.
Or planes could have disappeared off the face of the map as a result of the spatial disorientation of their pilots.
But a lot of it is simply due to pilot stress and fatigue.
We've heard one man's stories of time distortion and electronic fog, and another's seemingly impossible claims of levitation and metal bending, electromagnetic forces.
A cubic foot of it can actually power the Earth's energy needs for 100 years.
And most intriguing of all, the Earth's magnetic field is weakening more rapidly over the Bermuda Triangle than anywhere else on Earth. But at the end of our journey, no one reason satisfactorily accounts for the Triangle's strained reputation. The Bermuda Triangle has held on to its secrets. But perhaps that's just the way it should be, with one of the world's greatest mysteries.